What's the most unsettling thing a child has ever said to you? Apparently, when I was about 6 years old, I got up at 2 a.m. when my parents were partying with their friends in the living room. I looked at them all dead in the eye, wide-eyed, clutching my little toy cat and said, "You're all dying." Because I just learned that things get old and die, and I knew they were all older than me, so in my mind they were, closer to death. Then I looked at the person I thought was the oldest and therefore closest to death and said, "You're first." I don't know, I guess I thought that they needed to know. OP, I gotta know, were you right? Because if so, I'm afraid of you. If not, you're just a child. But I'm watching you. Next story. About 10 years ago, one of my nieces said, "Uncle, I have a secret to tell you. I'm going to end you. I'm going to super duper end you the next time I see you." Now, I've seen her many times since then, and I've yet to be super duper ended. She seems pretty well adjusted, so I'm not too worried about it. But I did keep an eye on her the next time she saw me. Next story. My then 2-year-old waving his little arms and asking a double amputee just trying to look at clothes and Target, "Hey lady, why don't you have any legs?" Well, I was mortified. The woman was beyond tickled. I thought she was going to have a heart attack from laughing so hard. Next story. I took my 4-year-old to an event at a local military museum. They had Black Hawk helicopter on display. They confidently climbed into the cockpit and put on the helmet, leaned forward and started going through the switches and dials on the dashboard, then realized that they can't reach the rudder pedals, froze for a moment, turned everything back to how it was, and reached out for me to lift them out of the door. In the car afterwards tells me, "I used to fly those. Maybe I can when I'm bigger again." That still hits me when I think about it. Next story. When my son was 3, he was snuggling on my lap and turned to me and said, "You have a passenger." I took a pregnancy test and, oh my god, he was right. Better than a chest buster, but still pretty unnerving. Next story. Apparently, when I was 4, I was mad about being put in timeout, so I told my mom that I would cut her in half, which absolutely freaked her out. She cried to my dad saying that I hated her. We didn't watch violent things and I had no exposure to it, so my parents had no idea where it came from. I'm 22 now with a clean record and a mother who is in fact not cut in half. Next story. My family moved when my sisters were quite small, maybe 4 and 6. I was barely 1, so no memories of that. Apparently, my sister, who was 4 at the time, cried for the first 3 nights in the new house. 4th night, she went to bed, no crying. My mom asked her the next day what changed. She said the people in the window told her everything was fine and she was safe there. My mom was amused. My sister's room was on the 2nd floor. She asked my sister what they looked like. My sister proceeded to describe 3 of our 4 grandparents, none of whom lived to see any of us born. I always wonder about the kids' descriptions here. Like, did the kids say really specific stuff like, "There's a mole on her left cheek," and I actually can't think of any specifics, but, stuff like that? Or was it just like, "Well, she was really old and her hair was gray." And then the parents are like, "Oh, did she have this?" And the kids are like, "Yeah." Because at that point, it's just suggestion. Or hey, maybe kids can see the dead, who knows? Next story. My 3-year-old son has a few. He called me in the middle of the night crying. I laid down with him and he fell back asleep. The next day I asked what happened and he said there were men in his room who kept opening and closing their mouths at him. No thanks. He wanted to set up a play tent in his room. We did so and he had a blast playing in it the whole day. He asked to leave it up so he can play with it the next day again. When husband put him to bed, he kept getting up and peeking at it. He asked him what's wrong. His response, "Daddy, I don't like the tent. I think there's someone in there." Needless to say, they had to deconstruct it immediately. He called me to his room after waking up in the morning. I laid down next to him and he looks at me and whispers, "Mommy, who's in there?" I turned around as I am crapping my pants to see the wardrobe is cracked open. My husband took socks out of it in the morning and forgot to close it. I put him down for a nap and I'm laying next to him. He kind of looks over my face to the corner of his room, raises his little finger and just points. I crap my pants again and turn very slowly, trying not to startle him. He whispers, "Look, Mommy, there's my rain jacket." At this point, I'm not sure if he's trolling me or what. Next story. My godson passed away young. His older sisters were only 10 and 11. I don't remember which one said it while we were in the hospital while he was on life support. I took them to get some real food and just away from their extended family. She said to me, "I knew he wouldn't live. No one had to tell me. I just saw his soul leave already. Don't tell Mommy. She thinks it's still there." Then the other one got a look on her face and said, "I'm pretty sure I saw him leave too. We said goodbye that night." I later followed up on this exchange with them. They don't remember it at all, but I don't expect them to. It was so hard on my god babies, and I'll never mention it again. Next story. When my son was about to turn 3, a dear friend of mine had gone missing. He asked why I was crying, and I told him that a friend was missing and people had been searching for him for 3 days. He told me my friend was alive but very hurt. He was technically correct on that day, but by the time my friend was found, it wasn't as hopeful. It makes me wonder if small children are more connected to the answers. Next story. This is a secondhand story about me. Obviously, I don't remember it because I was 3. My mom was pregnant at the time, and my parents were having financial struggles with the fact that they already had 2 kids under 4. I was 3, my brother was 2. One day, my mom was feeling sad, and I said, "Don't worry, Mommy. After the baby dies, Daddy will find a better job." My sister was indeed stillborn. My dad did find a better job very shortly after, too. My mom doesn't believe in any psychic powers or anything like that, so she has always been just as baffled by this as I am whenever I think about it. Next story. One day I was babysitting my little cousin and she asked me for a snack. Her parents typically kept them out of reach from her so she wouldn't devour them all in one sitting. I grabbed a chair so I could reach the top of their fridge and my little cousin completely freaked out as soon as I stepped on it. She said, and I quote, No, don't do that. That's how the lady that lives in my bathroom died." She was serious, tearing up. Chills ran through my body, and I took her to the park immediately because I was scared. Come to find out, the previous owner fell and broke her neck while standing on a bar stool changing a light fixture. Next story. When my daughter was around 14 months old, she was standing on her toddler tower eating breakfast at the corner and I was doing dishes. I looked over and she had locked eyes with a corner in the ceiling of the kitchen. I just kind of watched her stare in the corner for another 30 seconds or so and then she waved. I almost wanted to snatch her and run, but then she said, "Hi, Kiki," which is my grandmother, who passed almost 15 years ago. I instantly felt calm again and a little teary. Next story. List of things my 10-year-old has said in the past 10 years. Crossing his eyes. "Sorry, I'm in the blurry zone." At 6 years old. "Mom, they said hi." Looking out into the completely barren desert. "They're here." At 4 years old. Looking at apartments and suddenly he has a meltdown. "I don't want to go in there. There's monsters." Next story. When my oldest was around 3 or 4, I was reading her a bedtime story. She was fixated on the upper corner of the room and suddenly said, "Look at those eyes." There was nothing there, not even decorations or a stain or anything that looked like eyes. I brushed it off and kept reading. Next, she said, "What are the eyes doing?" I just said, "I'm not sure. Let's finish the story." Finally, she told me, "The eyes are moving." I slammed the book shut and noped out of there so fast. I felt guilty for that, but she didn't seem scared by it, just curious. This is the child who also told me around that same age that she saw the figure of a man with a deer head standing at the foot of her bed while we were on vacation. Next story. My stepmom gifted us an angel tree topper for our Christmas tree. It was her mother's, who had passed recently. My son was almost 3 at the time, and when we decorated the tree and I got the topper out, he said, "Oh, wow, OP's mama is an angel now, and she gets to be on our tree." He'd never seen a picture of the woman, and that particular Christmas he would ask me to take the angel topper off daily so he could play with OP's mama. Blew my mind, but my stepmom loved it so much. Next story. My favorite kids to babysit were a family of 4 children. 3 boys, 1 girl. The girl once said, "Sometimes Daddy yells and then Mommy cries." It broke my heart. I already knew he was a jerk, but it was a surprise to hear he was cruel to his wife. They divorced years later. I hope she found a partner worthy of her. She was the nicest mom in the neighborhood. Next story. My at the time 6-year-old sister asked me what kidneys do to her, so I explained it to her in a basic way so she'd get the general idea. She explained that she heard about someone donating a kidney and asked how donors survive. I said your body can function with 1 kidney. She said, "I want to donate both of mine to Granddad." Granddad's long dead, way before she was born. Narrator's commentary. I don't think this is unsettling, that's really sweet. I'm assuming that in her mind, if she donated her kidneys, then Granddad would be all better. So yeah, I think it's just a child wanting to do something nice to see someone she's never seen before. Not unsettling at all. Next story. My then 4-year-old daughter driving her home from daycare. "Mama, when Mommies and Daddies fight, someone is going to jail." At 5 years old, "When Cody dies, I'll be sad." Our dog had been sick, and my husband and I were very careful about having end-of-life conversations away from home. Next story. My toddler niece once ran out of my old bedroom looking terrified. She couldn't describe what had scared her but made a noise like "boof." and my brother-in-law offered buffalo, which she picked up, having no idea what an actual buffalo was. Buffaloes appeared in various places and seriously frightened her, but no one else ever saw them. On a trip to London, she adamantly refused to enter the tower because there were, quote, too many sad buffaloes in there. Next story. I work child/adolescent inpatient psych, so I've heard a lot of unsettling crap come out of children's mouths. The one that really haunts me, 11-year-old kid I was playing cards with nonchalantly said, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a serial murderer someday. I won't end you, though. Maybe. We'll see." From knowing his history and witnessing all of the things he had done during his stay, I firmly believe he wasn't just saying that to screw with me like all the other kids that have said crap like that. Average stay at our hospital is 2 weeks. He was with us for 6 months. Most terrifying kid I've ever encountered. Next story. Mommy, is that your hand on my shoulder? I was cuddling in bed with my 4-year-old, my arm around her waist but not touching her shoulder. My husband was downstairs with my father-in-law, who was at death's door after a battle with cancer. I quickly went downstairs and my husband had fallen asleep in the chair by his dad, who had just passed away. His grandkids were his pride and joy, and I think he visited them on his way out. Next story. An old friend of mine who had moved away was in town with her family, staying at an Airbnb, and my husband and I went to visit them at the Airbnb, which had a very elaborate tiki bar in the basement. Her kids were probably 7 and 4 at the time. They were super excited to show us the tiki bar. They had tons of energy and were running and jumping around, super happy to point out all the palm trees and coconuts and all the fun decor down there. There was also a closet door with a lock on it. The 4-year-old paused from all the jumping around and laughing, pointed to the door, and very somberly said, "Someone's ghost lives in there," and then immediately turned around to start running and laughing and pointing out the parrot statue. I finished the tiki bar tour as quickly as I could and ran back upstairs. Next story. My son, 4 at the time, overheard my cousin and I talking. She was heavily pregnant and I was 6 months behind her. She was wondering what her baby would be like. Boy spoke up and said, "She's got beautiful brown eyes, curly hair, and she's going to be wicked smart. She already loves you." We asked him how he knew this, and he looked us in the face and said, "Oh, I've known her since we were waiting." Waiting for what? Waiting in the place to be born. I know your grandfather, too, and your other grandfather, Mom. Next story. When I was a child, I creeped my mom out multiple times. The first was when I said that my friend in the woods visited me and that she would play with me. There was no friend in the woods. The second time that I creeped her out was actually recorded, and I said the time before I was alive, before I died, I was sitting beneath a tree, and a man came up behind me and strangled me. The other time I freaked her out was when I was looking through a photo book when I was maybe 3, and I recognized and knew the name of her grandmother's dog. I hadn't seen this dog before. One more thing. My dad isn't a believer in any of this, but I freaked him out so bad one time that he had to pull the car over because my great-grandmother and great-grandfather's song had come on the radio, and I knew every word, and I had barely even been speaking. I'm creepy, I own it. Kids are weird. Next story. When I worked for Head Start, there was a little girl who would tell me about Jordy. Apparently, Jordy whispered mean things through the backyard fence at her, would be making mean faces out the window at her when she left for school. He was so mean, her cat never wanted to play outside anymore, and her bird feeder didn't get birds either. Dad didn't seem to care, but when I told Mom, she was confused. The house next door was empty. Had been empty the 5 or so months they had lived in their place since moving in. Okay, so there comes a point where you have to wonder, are kids just seeing things? Do they all just naturally hallucinate? Because, hey man, it's kind of seeming like it right now, I'll be honest. It's freaky as hell. Next story. I think mine might be unsettling for a completely different reason. My last job, I worked with a great guy named Ben for 11 years. We're still dear friends. One major difference that was often a topic of discussion was that he was deeply religious, like super involved in his church and carries his Bible everywhere he goes. I'm an atheist. I don't hate Christianity or Christians as a whole. It just never made sense to me, and I never had a problem talking to Ben about it because he was a real Christian. Ben was the real deal. So the first time I met his 4 kids and wife at his house for dinner, no more than 10 minutes after shaking his 14-year-old son's hand, he asked me if I was a believer. I didn't want to lie to him because Ben always talked about how mature he was. I just said, "No, I'm not. I think faith is just a gift I've never received." The kid smiled, looked at me and said, "That's okay, man. He still loves you." and he never said another word about it. I know that's not disturbing or anything like that. It was just a moment of realization for me. And as simple of a statement it hit me pretty hard. I was used to Christians that endlessly tried to convert me or judged me in a way that they think is sneaky. I have a lot of family members like that, but that whole family made me realize that not all Christians are that way, and I don't need to avoid people because they're religious. I thought all Christians were judgmental, which is me judging other people, just in a different way. Now, I give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove they're judgmental. Next story. My 2-year-old told me, "Minnow wants to hurt Cat. Minnow was her imaginary friend. Cat was our cat. Anyway, about an hour later, my cat is losing his mind, clearly super agitated and in fight for his life mode. My cat is attacking something I can't see in the middle of the living room for like 10 minutes. I couldn't stop him. So I took my baby outside and went for a walk. Get back home and my daughter said, "Don't go inside. Cat is almost done." Okay. We start walking down the street and my daughter says, "Minnow is gone now. We can go home." Walk back into the house and I see my cat has calmed down, but still on edge a bit. I can smell and taste blood, like I had a nosebleed. Check cat out, no injuries. Daughter and I are fine as well. Then daughter says, "Don't worry, Dada. Cat got rid of Minnow, and now I can play with him too." My now 12-year-old daughter doesn't remember Minnow or cat fighting a ghost or demon or whatever for her, but I'll never forget that crap. Babies and animals can and do see through the veil. Next story. Not something they said, but did. She smiled at me. It was my first child, early 20s. Never wanted kids and felt very strongly about that. But they wouldn't sterilize me because I was, quote, too young. My pill failed me and I didn't find out until I was 6 months along. Inevitably struggled to bond with the baby. I know it's hard for everyone, but it was super hard for me. Only child, no experience with children. I never even held a baby until my own. Anyway, one day I had been feeding her. She was about 3 months, was holding her on my lap, and I looked away at something, then looked back at her. She did this gigantic smile. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. All of a sudden, I got that massive rush of love everyone talks about when they have their babies. It didn't come for me at the start. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I knew I liked it, so I kept looking away and looking back to make her keep smiling, and she did. And I cried harder than I think I'd ever cried before. It freaked me out in the nicest way possible. That baby is now my 18-year-old best friend, and I have 2 toddlers as well. I'll never forget that moment as long as I live. Narrator's commentary. You can't convince me that this is not a psyop for birth rates or something like that. This feels like an ad almost. Hey, I'm not saying I hate kids, but something about this post feels, I don't know, I can't say feels off because it's a sweet story. It is. It's very cute. But if I were to write propaganda to raise my country's birth rate, this is how I do it. Just saying. Next story. I once babysat an extremely ADHD boy, about 8 or 9 maybe. Homework was a nightly battle for him. Once he revolted against a worksheet so hard that I summoned his mother. When she arrived, he opened his bedroom window, climbed into the frame, and threatened to jump if she made him do the worksheet. Stone calm, I crap you not, that woman said, "Honey, it's a 2nd floor window. If you jump, you're not going to die. You're going to break your leg or maybe your arm. Then we're going to the ER, and because you're not having a heart attack, they won't see you right away. We'll have to sit and wait, maybe for hours, and it's going to hurt the whole time. I don't want to spend my evening that way, so please, get out of the window." And it worked. I can't remember whether he did the homework or not, though. Next story. I'm a preschool teacher in New York and have been for over a decade, including some unsavory neighborhoods. The worst things I've ever heard are from the same little boy. First incident was, "You freaking female dog," used in correct context towards another female classmate. Was insane watching a little girl be called that for the first time. Second thing he said, "I just don't like it when Daddy hits Mommy and yells. I just cover my little sister's ears when he's yelling at her." He was 3 and she was 2. They had went to a DV shelter because he was stalking them, and when she went back to collect her things and her children's belongings, everything was covered in bed bugs. Next story. A little boy in church told me about the abuse he was receiving when I pulled him into the hall because he was disruptive. I was appalled, aghast, offended, saddened, scared, and so many other things all at once. I spoke to child care for the state to start the investigation. I left that church before finding out the final disposition of his case. and I only had the initial discussion with the Protective Services Division. Next story. When my daughter was about 3 or 4, I was brushing her hair one morning and must have pulled a bit too hard. She turned around and said, "My other mom never hurt me when she brushed my hair." I froze and asked, what do you mean, your other mom? She just started talking. She said her other mom had very long hair and was very kind. She talked about having lots of brothers and sisters, but only getting along with 2 of them. One sister was named Lacey, and apparently they were very close. Over the next months, she would casually mention this other family like they were real memories, not pretend stories. Then, around age 5, it completely stopped. No more comments, no more memories. She's 9 now, and when I asked her about it, she has no idea what I'm talking about. She doesn't remember any of it. Still one of the strangest things I've experienced as a parent. Next story. We were walking in the neighborhood past the wooded section when my 18-month-old pointed into the forest and said, "Hiding people! Hiding peeping people." Around age 2, we were sleeping at my parents' old, interesting house when she started grumbling in her sleep and talking. This is what she said. "Pretend there's ghost. Pretend there's ghost. Not pretend." Silence. I get out. Next story. A couple of weeks after my mom died, I was babysitting my sister's kids. We were watching a film and her youngest, 3 at the time, sits up beside me and says, "Auntie O.P., Granny Mary's in my bedroom." I looked at this kid like she had 10 heads and said, "Okay." And we went back to watching the film. When the film is over, I say to the 3-year-old, "Okay, bedtime, let's go." She says, "Yay, now I can show you Granny Mary." We head up the stairs, her excited, running up it on all 4s like kids do when they're trying to run upstairs fast, and I'm gripping to the banister so hard my knuckles are turning white. I'm up to 90 over my 3-year-old niece telling me she's seeing Granny Mary in her room. My heart is pounding a mile a minute thinking my niece is seeing my dead mother's ghost before she goes to sleep at night. She leads me into her room over her dresser, points at my mother's recently printed memorial card, looks up at me and says with a smile, "See, Granny Mary is in my room." I nearly melted through the floor with relief. Not an experience I'll forget in a hurry. Next story. Once I had to stay the night to cat sit at my brother's. I left my 10-year-old at home with my sis. At about midnight, he called me, woke me up, and was sobbing uncontrollably and trying to tell me something. When he could finally speak words through the sobs, he said, "The man with a gun." It's what it sounded like, at least, and then he sobbed some more. I immediately sat bolt upright and tried to figure out my next steps. I thought for sure a man was in his bedroom with a gun the way he was freaking out. After about 30 seconds of me trying to get him to give me more info, he tells me, "In a video game. Someone shot him in a video game." I was relieved and angry at the same time. All that because he died in a video game. Oh, I will never forget the fear and helplessness I felt, though. Next story. Do doggies die? Yes, doggies do die when they get old. The kid thinks for a minute and then says, "Okay, so the doggies die and then we eat them?" What? No, we don't eat the doggies. Next story. The kid I took under my wing at the gym comes from a really bad home life. I started working out with him, ended up paying his gym dues, and he's more or less part of my family now. One day I took him out to breakfast after our workout to make sure he got a good meal in, and he asked me, "Have you ever gone to bed hungry?" I said, "No." He said, "It really sucks." That hit me to the core. Next story. My husband was in the army. He told our 5-year-old that he went to a scary place in the army. She asked him if he ended lots of people. I was unsettled. We never talked about the military like that. Sheesh, child, no. He fixed the helicopters, goodness. Another time, she ran towards me, kissed my belly, and said in the sweetest voice, "Hi, baby." Now, this might not be unsettling to some people, but it was to me. Next story. So I had my boy-girl twins in 2017 with my fiancé. I had a twin miscarriage in 2012 with the guy I was dating. Not that into the pregnancy, so I took it as it was. One rainy, crappy day, the 3 of us were having a snack watching Disney. My daughter, they were 3 or 4, started looking out of the window and then stared at me, saying, "I never like the rain much." I just kind of giggled and said, "Why?" She then proceeded to tell me that, "On the rainy days when we had to leave your belly and it was so sad." I was a little confused by this. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I said, "Oh, it wasn't raining the day you guys were born." My daughter looked at me like I was a silly goose and said, "No, Mummy. The first time we were in your belly, it was rainy, and when we had to go out and wait with the angels for the perfect time to come back." I couldn't even say anything except, "Oh, yeah." Next story. When I was a younger babysitter, maybe 17, 18 at the time, I watched a 2/3-year-old boy. When he got upset with me over something I don't remember, he said with a blank face, "My daddy's got a gun and he's gonna end you." I was naive and assumed it was one of those silly things kids said. I got paid and never returned that one. Looking back on it, even the house had a creepy touch to it. It was a larger, new build, just dad and son. All the rooms were set up like a show house. Plastic still on most of the mattresses. Well, duh, OP. The plastic is on the mattresses because it's easier to get the blood off that way. Obviously. Next story. My 5-year-old always says crazy stuff that makes me believe in reincarnation. Recently, as the kids were dancing, she started breaking out into some insane tap dance moves. I was just like, whoa, where'd you learn that? She proceeded to tell me, "Don't you remember? You and Papa taught me a long time ago before you were my Mama and Papa now. You were a different Mama and Papa, and you guys taught me, and I was a famous dancer." Then she looked away wistfully and sighed, saying, "Yeah, that was a long time ago, before the time I was your mama, and now you're my mama again," and danced away. She tends to say these kinds of things a lot. And my oldest used to wake up in the middle of the night screaming that there were bubble lights floating around the room and they were scaring her. Kids are a trip. Next story. I coach multiple sports, and when a kid came to practice with a shiner so big that his eye was swollen shut, I asked what happened. He said his dad hit him. I'm a mandated reporter that's supposed to report abuse. I let the kid sleep at my house that night, dealt with the cops. Sadly, he ended up in the foster system. Mom was nowhere to be found. I would have adopted him, but didn't have the room or means. Next story. When my eldest was 6, she came for a cuddle, pushed her little face into my belly and said, "There's a baby in there. Oh, actually there's 2, but one died." Turns out I was pregnant. I didn't even know yet I hadn't missed a period. I did have 2 small sacs at ultrasound, and super high HCG levels for that early in the pregnancy. One sac looked good, one looked odd. A couple weeks later had a massive PV bleed. I'm assuming that's when I lost the, quote, one that died. The other one is going strong. 4 years old now. Next story. I worked at a summer camp for very privileged children. I was chatting with some of the kids one day, and the topic of being excited to go home came up, with some saying, "Oh, I'm so excited to have McDonald's again or see my friends." One little girl, about 6, just said, "I miss my nanny." Not super unsettling like some of the comments above, but it just made me sad that this little girl had been away from her parents for 8 weeks, and she missed her nanny. Not her mom, not her dad, her nanny. I'm sure the nanny was a wonderful woman, but it still struck me as sad. Next story. One Tuesday morning, my 2-year-old son came into the living room with me, as he always did while I made coffee, and said, "We go pick up brother," his half-brother, "today." I reminded him it was Monday, and we only picked him up on Thursdays. Kid looked at me straight in the eye and said, "We pick up brother," nodded his head and went back to his room. I poured my coffee for my husband and me, and took the newspaper into our bedroom, where we chatted and read. Eventually, I read the obituaries, because we always did. And damn it, brother's mother's obituary was right there. She had died of an overdose over the weekend while brother was with us. This was the first we'd heard of it. We did indeed pick up brother that day. Our son said he knew we would. Next story. Used to be a young leader for 5 to 7-year-olds. In the summer, we'd walk in the woods and do outdoor activities. One day we're out there, and well, this one girl speaks up who is known for being quite odd, and the forest, which is also renowned for being very haunted. She comes up to me, stands on a patch of rock, and says, "There's a dead girl under here." Very nice to know. Okay, let's move on, please, and thank you. Next story. My friend's daughter had been saying she had a wizard friend. She was adamant that he was not imaginary. My brother, thinking she would give him a silly answer, asked her, "Oh, what's the wizard's name?" Without a single moment of hesitation, she came out with a fully ancient, well-pronounced Latin name. I don't know what it was exactly. Just something like Tiberius Esotericus. We all froze. We have questions about whether she had been really contacted by a wizard. She was 4. Next story. I sadly wasn't there to hear it when it happened, but my niece had a phase when she was about 5, where she would add ness to words. "That dog is bigness. The snow is coldness. This pizza is yumness," etc. One day, my in-laws were driving somewhere with her and her brother in the back seat, and my nephew started intentionally spraying water from his bottle on her and telling her it was pee. She got upset and screamed to her parents, "Mom, he keeps touching me with his..." Yeah. Confusion and chaos apparently ensued. That same niece sometime later went to a restaurant, went to the restroom, and read some graffiti in the stall that said, "Lick my privates." She came back, sat down, and asked her parents, "Why would anyone want to lick a cat?" She's 22 now and continues to be a gem. Next story. I worked at a preschool and was pushing a 4-year-old girl on the swings. Let's call her Emma. She seemed lost in thought, and I asked her what she was thinking of.
"Oh, just thinking about when I used to be bigger and the volcano made me die."
I said, "You died? In your dream? Or was this something you saw in a movie?"
"No, back when I used to be bigger like you. I lived on an island and my brother threw me into lava in a volcano and I died. It only burned for a minute though."
I said, that was before what?
"Before I was Emma."
Next story. Not unnecessarily unsettling, but my 3-year-old swears she was there when I was born. She said she had reddish purple hair and lots of gold rings. She also said I had a lot of black hair when I was first born, and she was the first one to hold me. An absolute description of my late grandmother, whom she's named after. I don't have photos of my grandmother around the home because my mother stole them all at the funeral. The few photos I have of her are digital, and she's been saying this for long before I ever told her stories of my nanny. Also, her favorite lullaby is a really random song my nanny used to sing me. She is also really psychic. She's almost 4 and was born with gifts. Next story. I worked for about 9 months in a step-down facility for kids that needed some time inpatient. We had a young kid around 10 who was put in because they'd attempted to murder their stepmom and other family members twice. This was also not their first stint either. At one point, I was working on homework with the kid and they looked up at me and said,
"You know, I like you. I don't think I'll end you."
Thanks, kiddo. Yeah, I don't do that kind of work anymore, but that one has always stuck with me, as they were the only child to actually scare me. The rest were poor little broken things that I wish only the best for. This one, though, you can't even diagnose a child with most of the stuff we were pretty sure they had, but I hope they just went on to sell used cars or do some MLM scheme, because their other options were prison or dead with those kind of issues. I kind of love how half the stories are children who are legitimately terrifying and maybe will grow up to just end people one day, and others are just like, "Oh, my 3-year-old said he lived another life." Isn't that funny? Just a stark contrast. Next story.
"Mom, who are those men in my room?"
Uttered in the dark by my then 10-year-old at my bedside at 2 a.m. I was the only adult in the house at the time. Husband was away for work. I think I lost a few years off my life in that moment. I've never moved out of my bed so fast. He shared a room with his 5-year-old brother at the time, and I immediately thought the worst. When everything in the bedroom appeared to be in order, I turned my 10-year-old and asked, "What men?" Worried they might have moved to somewhere else in the house and still trying to get my bearings. 10-year-old turns to me holding out his pointer finger with a slightly blank look in his eyes and said,
"The little men. The little men on my finger."
Freaking kid was sleepwalking and talking, dreaming about pixies or something running all over. Next story. This wasn't said to me, but a friend of mine's daughter-in-law has a daughter who at the time was about 4, maybe 5. The little girl went and told my friend while her mother was holding a baby that if her mother ever had another baby, she would end it. When she told me about it, I was shook. What a weird thing to say. Needless to say, that girl is now 14 and in major therapy for a lot of issues. Can't say I didn't see that one coming. Next story. I have twins. Health visitor checkups were obviously a nightmare. I just don't have enough hands to be comforting one while the other is being undressed for weighing and complaining loudly. So my mom was always there. It was first jab time and I'm holding one on my knee and health visitors getting many needles and stuff ready because 2 of everything. The one on my lap gets the usual quick stab of the thigh and gives me a filthy look as if I'd personally hurt him. Not a peep out of him. Twin 2 on my mom's knee in the other side of the room screams like someone just stuck a needle in his thigh. The adults in the room just looked at each other with, "What just happened?" looks on their faces. Next story. My 6-year-old son has a level 1 autism. The other night he crawled into bed with me. He starts on about Emily and how she's dead. She apparently got sick around November, December, and she, quote, died quickly. But not to worry, she'll come back to life in 2027, but not in time for his birthday. When I suggested she was a zombie, he said, "No, she's a girl." Before she got sick, she lived at a poorhouse. Then he went to go back to his own bed and left me in the dark wondering, what the hell? Next story. The most unsettling thing a child has ever said to me was, "Do my parents really love me?" It's not just the words, it's the way they asked. You can hear the doubt in their voice, that little crack in their certainty, and it makes you realize how vulnerable they feel. It's a question that makes you stop and think, because Love should be something that feels solid and unquestionable for a kid. But when a child says something like that, it's like they're not so sure anymore. And that hits differently. It's a reminder that sometimes love doesn't feel clear to them, even if it is there. It makes you want to say more than just, yes, of course, because love isn't always visible in the ways they expect. But you don't always have the answers to give them either. This thread had a little bit of everything, huh? It was funny, it was terrifying, and it had that little bit of sadness, which you always have when you have a thread about children and anything, really. Anyways, do you guys have any stories about your children or children you've interacted with saying creepy things? Let us know. For now, though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. P.S. Sorry I had to use my stupid little kid voice for so much of this thread. I hope you at least found it entertaining.